Well, good evening. I'm Jacob Hornberger, president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, and this is the Jacob Hornberger Show here live on the internet, Saturday nights from 7 to 7:30. Pure, unadulterated, no compromise libertarianism. And tonight, I want to talk to you about income taxation, the IRS, the welfare state, the warfare state, and all the nonsense that's being promulgated during those presidential debates, except, of course, by Ron Paul, the standard caveat that we all have to make when we're talking about these debates and the races and so forth. But first of all, I want to remind you about our tremendously exciting Civil Liberties Tour, college Civil Liberties Tour that's coming up. It's almost here. It's a week from this coming Monday. It starts February 6th, and we kick it off. We're doing it in partnership with the Young Americans for Liberty. They're just a fantastic group of young people, many college students that are advancing libertarianism. And we've got together the most fantastic panel that you can ever have on civil liberties. I mean, you just can't get much better than this. We've got Glenn Greenwald, who Forbes magazine describes as one of the 25 most influential liberals in the country. He blogs over at salon.com. He's a constitutional lawyer. He's the author of a few books. And you can't find a better, more relentless, steadfast defender of civil liberties than Greenwald. And as we all know, after Obama was elected, many of the liberals went silent on civil liberties, or most of the liberals did, because their man was now in power. Now, of course, the Republicans and conservatives do the same thing when their man's in power, but not Greenwald. Greenwald was steadfast on civil liberties when George Bush was in the presidency, and then once Obama took over and he continued the same nonsensical policies, Greenwald did not hesitate to take him to task, and he continues to do so. And then we've got Bruce Fine, a conservative, served in the Reagan Justice Department, but one of the most erudite, knowledgeable, fierce, eloquent proponents of civil liberties you'd ever find. I mean, Fine is one of those like spellbinder speakers that you just can't help but just be gripped by what he's saying. I'll be giving the libertarian case. Fine's a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. So it's going to be very exciting. We got Jack Hunter from American Conservative and the Young Americans for Liberty, where he works. He's going to be moderating the panel. Yal is promoting it on the campuses. We start out at Columbia. Oh, by the way, it's open to the public, free. If you're in any of these areas, I'd highly invite you to come and visit us. It'd be really nice to have libertarians interacting with the students and kind of exposing them maybe to other aspects of libertarianism, like economic liberty. But it's primarily civil liberties, foreign policy, which I consider the real big assault on freedom. Now, we all know that socialism is the welfare state, the drug war, the regulated society. But here, what they've done here, the military-industrial complex, the CIA, the national security state, in terms of the power to seize people, the military power to seize people, including Americans, cart them away to a concentration camp, no charges, no due process of law, torture them, execute them, waterboard them. I mean, it's the most incredible thing. I mean, I never thought I'd be living in a society like this. I mean, I knew if I was living in Egypt, where the U.S. government has a big, strong military dictatorship that it has supported for several years, I'd say okay. But in this country, that's the country we're living in, and that's the purpose of this tour, to expose young people to the freedom side of this thing, both from the liberal, conservative, and libertarian perspective. To let them know that we don't have to live in a country like this, that this is not normal, this is not necessary to keep us safe, and all the other garbage they use to justify this totalitarian methodology that they have, that this is abnormal, it's aberrant, and that there is a way to restore a free and prosperous society to our land, and of course, it's through the dismantling of the whole empire, military, industrial complex, CIA, national security nonsense, and so forth. So we start in Columbia University in New York. We go over to Indiana University and Purdue University in a joint panel there for those two colleges. Then we go over to Middle Tennessee State University and end up at Ohio State University. So it's going to be fantastic. Going to be live streamed on the Young Americans for Liberty website. You can check it out there. We'll have a link to that website from our page on the Civil Liberties Tour. So it's going to be an exciting time. And if you're in the area, I'd love to have you join us. All right. I want to talk to you about income taxation on it because there's just so much nonsense coming out of these presidential debates. Now, have you noticed that they're all arguing over what the rate should be, what the income tax rate should be? Well, except for Ron Paul. I mean, he says 0, and the others say, 15% or 15 and 30% or 35%. And, in fact, when Ron Paul says 0, he's not just saying that should be the income tax rate. That's where the talk show, the pundits, the press, that sit there and ask the questions, the moderators and so forth, plus the people that write articles about the debates, that's where they get it all wrong. They all say, well, Ron advocates a 0% income tax. They get it all wrong. He's not advocating a 0% income tax. That's not what libertarians advocate. We advocate that there should be no income tax. Okay? Now, that's a fundamental difference because we don't believe in income taxation. We don't believe that the state should have the power to seize any percentage of a person's income. That when you say, 0%, you're sort of implying that there's an income tax and then its rate should be at, 0% or, sort of like 0.5% or 1%, like it should be at a real low rate. No. We believe in the fundamental right of people to keep everything they earn. I mean, that's just a no-brainer for us. We don't let government interfere with religious activities. And, that's the way we feel about what you do with your money. We don't want the government interfering with what people do with their money. It's their money. It's our money. It doesn't belong to the state. Doesn't belong to the government. Doesn't belong to society. And you see, that's what the income tax did. It effectively nationalized income. Okay, now we know about gold, right? That in the 1930s, prior to the 1930s, gold had been the money of the United States. That was the official money. That people carried around gold and silver coins because that was their money. I mean, that's what the gold standard meant. That the official money of the United States would not be paper. It would not be irredeemable notes. It would be, just gold and silver coins. And that's why you have restrictions on the states from issuing bills of credit, which effectively is paper money. That's why the federal government was not granted the authority to issue paper money. Gold and silver coins were the official money. So we all know that Roosevelt nationalized gold, right? That he just confiscated it. He seized it. He made it a felony offense to own gold. Imagine that. Americans lived for more than 100 years with an official money as provided in the Constitution of their nation. And all of a sudden, overnight, the President of the United States says it's now illegal to do that. And I'm going to go out and I'm going to prosecute any person that does it, turn it into the government. And, of course, they paid a discounted price for it. It was just theft. It was no different from Fidel Castro's nationalization of industries or the Soviets' nationalization of things. It's absolutely no different, just pure abject theft. Hugo Chavez's, nationalization of oil industries and so forth. No difference. Well, what a lot of Americans don't realize is that same principle applies to income. That what they did is with the income tax, they nationalized income. They essentially said everybody's income now belongs to the state. Yeah. And now, by virtue of the fact that they set the rate, they're simply saying this is how much we're going to permit you to keep. But they set the rate. The government sets the rate. If the government sets the rate at 98%, which it has the authority to do, then you keep 2%. Or if they want to be nicer and they want to set it at 40%, they let you keep 60%. But what's significant about this is the government, the Congress, the president, they own the income now by virtue of the national income tax. And then like a parent that gives his child an allowance, that's what the rate's all about. That's how they determine how much they're going to be permitted to let you have, how much they're permitting you to have. I mean, really the most honest way to handle this thing so that everybody would get a sense of what was going on is if there was 100% withholding, and all the self-employed people, everybody sends everything they make to the government, and then the government sends a check back every month to what it wants people to have, because that's really what's happening here. They disguise it in the sense of having an income tax rate and a withholding. So it looks like you're getting your money like it's your money and you're giving part of your money to the state. But that's just nonsense. That's just a charade. What's really happening is the government nationalized income and then gives back a little bit to people in terms of their allowance. And even if it's a lot, if it's 90%, let's say the income tax rate is 10%. Well, they're being nice, but it's being a generous parent, but it's no different. The principle is the same, that they are effectively giving people an allowance. Now compare that to the libertarian position, and that is that we own our income. It is the fruits of our earnings. That nature or God endowed in every person certain abilities and talents, and some people are more talented than others in certain areas, better singers, better actors, they go to Hollywood, better sports figures, they go into the NFL, make a lot of money. But regardless of what these talents and abilities and interests are, they are unique to each person. I mean, they belong to each person. You are you, you're one of a kind. And you own yourself. You don't belong to the state. That's what slavery's all about. When somebody else owns you, the government owns you. You're a slave. But under the principles of natural rights and God-given rights and principles under libertarianism, you own yourself. And so your talents and abilities are put to your own use. You go out in the marketplace and you start a business using whatever talents you have and producing goods and services that other people are willing to pay for, or you go work for a company and you're drawing a salary. This is your stuff. I mean, it's your business. It's your labor that's going into all this. And the fruits of that belong to you. I mean, if you're not owned by society, then why should the fruits of your earnings be owned by society? They belong to you. This is private ownership of property. And so libertarians say it's a no-brainer. People should be free to keep everything they earn. And oh, by the way, this is the key to a prosperous society. Okay? It's not only a key to a free society, because notice the difference now, that when you're free to keep everything you earn, the government can't do anything about it. It can't say, oh, well, we're going to raise the rate on you, because there ain't no rate. There's no income tax. There's no IRS. You don't need to rush to the post office every April 15th to file your little return and get your little postmark. No, you don't have to do any of that. You don't have to keep your deductions and your tax credits or any of that junk. You don't have to keep any of that. Just imagine, no IRS, no income tax. And people say, oh, Jacob, that's just too pie in the sky. You libertarians are just not practical. That could never happen. But the problem with that assertion is it flies in the face of history. It flies in the face of reality. Hello, Americans live without income taxation and an IRS for more than 100 years. Yeah. They kept everything they earned. They didn't have to worry about the IRS coming and taking their money. Their presidential debates did not involve, what rate should we have on the income tax? Should it be a 10% or a 20%? Because there was no income tax. You see, this is why a lot of these statists don't like looking at history, because, the history just stares them in the face. When they say, oh, you libertarians aren't pragmatic. Hello? I mean, Americans lived without income taxation. They proved that it's possible. And not just for a short period of time, 5 years, more than a century. People were free to accumulate wealth, unlimited amounts of wealth. Oh, did I mention that this is also the key to rising standards of living, to a prosperous society? This is the key to ending poverty. I mean, this is what amazes me about the statists on the left, is that all the things they advocate to help the poor are the exact opposite of helping the poor. You know, like minimum wage laws that lock out of the labor market people whose labor is valued less than the artificially set minimum. They lock out they lock the poor out of starting businesses to compete against the rich, well-established businesses by hiring people in the neighborhood, you know, at less than minimum wages. People in the neighborhood, friends, relatives might be more than willing to pitch in. Let's start this business, and I'll work for $1 an hour. Give me some stock options down the line, and they can't do that. And so you see, and then you've got the welfare system, you know, where they put people in public housing, and then they say, if you earn too much money, we'll kick you out. Well, if they're kicked out, they don't have enough of a nest egg to go buy a house, like down payment and so forth, so they languish in a public housing project for the rest of their lives. And this is what statists call helping the poor. Well, this is idiocy. That's no way to help people, to make them dependent wards of the state where they're under the control of the government, where they got to vote the way the government wants, and they have to live in fear that their dole is going to be terminated at any particular time. The real key to helping the poor is when you've got a dynamic society where the poor have the ability to get rich and are getting rich. I mean, if you look throughout the 19th century, there were lots of poor people getting rich. In fact, a lot of the people that they exclaim against, you know, the rich, they used to be poor. You know, so like, who's poor? You know, the rich person who used to be poor? Well, you know, this is the dynamics of a free market system where people are free to keep everything they earn, and where there's no, you know, regulations and controls, where enterprise is free of government control. I mean, that was the revolutionary aspect of the concept of free enterprise that was you know, originally developed in Adam Smith's fantastic work, An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations. Now, notice Smith's not asking what's the cause of poverty. He understands that's sort of the natural state. People don't have anything. He wanted to know, what is it that causes wealth in a nation? And his answer was enterprise that is free of government control. That if you have a nation where the government cannot manage the economy, okay? In other words, it's not like our nation that we have today. Where government's not managing the economy, is not interfering with economic activity, where economic activity is free of government control, free enterprise, where people are free to accumulate unlimited amounts of wealth. This is the key. This is the key to ending poverty in a society, because all of a sudden you've got everybody that is out there in that dynamic marketplace. No minimum wage laws, no regulations. People are starting up businesses. Businesses are going out of business because consumers are shifting tastes and interests and what they want to buy. People then turn around, that business goes under, they're free to start a new business, hire new people. I mean, it's a dynamic process. And it looks chaotic, but it's actually just each person pursuing his own interests in his own way, and then dovetailing his plans with everybody else. And oftentimes you get a result that nobody even plans. I mean, it's the unforeseen consequences of human action. But in this process, you see this rising standard of living, especially for poor people. I mean, not only are the poor getting wealthy because they're now in this dynamic way of being able to accumulate wealth, but there's also the sense of, as the standard of living rises in the society, there's a huge spillover effect for the poor that live in that society. I mean, if you take, for example, the United States, which, okay, we all know it's a welfare state, it's a warfare state, it's going bankrupt, but there's still much larger economic liberty here left than say in Guatemala. I mean, where the socialist, fascist, mercantilist system is like, you know, very, very oppressive on economic activity. And so obviously, if you have more economic activity, even under a socialist system, you're going to have less poverty than over here if you have much more government control and government management and so forth. Well, the reason I bring this up, if you take, for example, a priest, a Catholic priest or a Catholic nun, that take vows of poverty. Okay, let's assume they're in a monastery, seminary somewhere, and they take a vow of poverty. And so does their counterpart in Guatemala. I will guarantee you, that the nun or priest who takes a vow of poverty in the United States lives a significantly better lifestyle than his or her counterpart in Guatemala. Now, you can say, Jacob, how's this possible? They're both poor. They both own nothing. They have taken vows of poverty. They don't own anything. Because if you look at the living quarters and the style of living of the person here, it's incredible. They got a car, late model car they're driving. Their dorms in which they live are very nice, air conditioned, central air and heat. They usually have like a nice little library in the monastery. Their food, their meals are catered to them because they're receiving donations from people. And guess who the donations are coming from? Yeah, the rich people, the middle class people that say, hey, this is an important thing for us. But if you go in Guatemala, you'll see that the people there that take vows of poverty are living very, very miserable lives economically. Why? Well, there's just not a lot of wealth in that society that can fund these other people that are taking the vows of poverty. So, in a free society, a society in which enterprise is free of government control, the poor tremendously benefit. Not just the poor who want to get rich, but the poor who are also taking these vows of poverty. Now, what's the reason for this? Well, Smith hinted at it, and it was later developed by the Austrian economists, Ludwig von Mises, Friedrich Hayek, Israel Kirzner, Eugen von Bombewerk, Karl Menger. I mean, and then, of course, the current day list of Austrian economists, is that capital is key here. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, as people are making a lot of money, okay, no income tax, they inevitably save a part of that income. Now, it's not necessarily true. I mean, nothing requires a person to save money. They can go out. Right now, who saves money? Very few people save money. But that's just because people they don't have a choice. The welfare warfare state is busting them. They're barely eking out a survival. So it's very difficult to save a large percentage of your income or even any part of your income. But when you've got no income tax, then all of a sudden you're talking about saving a sizable portion of your income. And that savings is key because people then, like say, go put it in the bank, and that's capital. And so the businessman, let's say it's the company for whom these people are working, let's say they're all employees and they go out and put their money in the bank, but they're working for ABC Company. ABC Company, the owners go to the bank and say, we want to expand our business here. We need better tools. We need better equipment. These people, let's say it's a farm. They're saying our employees they're using hose to, harvest the crops or plant the crops, and they're using hand tools to harvest the crop. We want tractors. We want to buy tractors, and the bank says, oh, well, we've got the money here in the bank from these savings to let you go buy your tractor. And he borrows the money, gets a tractor, brings it, and he says to his workers, by the way, toss those hoes. You got a tractor here now. And all of a sudden, you see the harvest, go up tenfold. And all of a sudden, much bigger revenues, much bigger profits, and that provides more money to pay higher wages. This is why wages were soaring in the 1800s, because of capital was soaring, productive capital, tools, equipment that were making people more productive. And you didn't have to rely on the benevolence of the owner to pay higher wages. He had to meet what the competition was doing because everybody was becoming more productive. And or at least those companies that were serving, consumers by producing what consumers wanted. But you had this dynamism taking place that was benefiting those at the bottom of the economic ladder. And as I pointed out in a blog post at FFF last Friday, when you've got this dynamic free enterprise system, you've got the ability of, let's say, employees in a firm to save money, who after 5 years or so, let's say they've each saved $10,000 a year, and 10 of them go out and they have $100,000 each, and That's $1 million. They can start their own business. They can hire people in the neighborhood at sub-minimum wages because there's no minimum wage, and there's no big regulations that protect the big companies today from competition. And all of a sudden, you're talking about a real dynamism where the poor are really becoming self-sufficient, independent, and providing goods and services for consumers. Because the more choices consumers have, the better off we all are, and the employees are consumers too. We're all consumers in a certain extent. So this is the key. I mean, this is the key. This is what liberals they get it all wrong. They think the key is to have government fighting poverty. No, 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 no. That's the exact opposite of what you want. When government fights poverty, you end up with more poverty. I mean, that's the cause of the poverty. Government fighting the poverty. If you prohibit government from fighting the poverty, that's the key to ending poverty. That's what the whole concept of enterprise free of government control or free enterprise is all about. Now, obviously, liberals and conservatives don't get it. And those of you who've been listening to this show, you know that I lump liberals and conservatives into the same category because there ain't a dime's worth of difference between them. I mean, what's the difference between Obama and Romney and Gingrich and Santorum and the rest of the GOPs except Ron Paul? There's no difference. It's just a difference in, like, who are we going to tax? Obama says, well, we got to tax the rich, and these guys over here, no, we got to tax the poor, or no, we got to tax the middle class, and but their whole mindset is, who do we tax to fund the welfare warfare state? I mean, that's their given. You see, there's no different from the military dictatorship in Egypt, for example. In Egypt, it's very clear what's happening, and I've been saying this in my blog posts and stuff, that the military-industrial complex there says, the military is here to stay. We're the foundation of society. Get used to it. We're permanent. Build your society. Put your little government on top, but we are here to stay. Well, that's no different from over here. The statists, liberals and conservatives, say the welfare warfare state is here. We're going to have the bases overseas. We're going to have an empire. We're going to have the government be the world's policeman. We're going to have the federal government be the world's welfare provider. We're going to help bail out those European welfare states. We're going to have a welfare state here at home. Get used to it. That's the permanent foundation of your society. Now get ready to pay for it. You see, and that's what this is all about. And they play this game of who's going to be taxed. But believe me, somebody's going to get taxed. And what they end up doing is they turn all of us against each other. Like, we're all trying to guard our own pocketbooks from being taxed. Deductions and tax credits and all this. But we want the other guy to pay for this. So there's this little conflict, this war that they develop between the citizenry. And because, remember what Milton Friedman said. Friedman said the real level of taxation is what they're spending. Because, you see, it's not a magic act. The government, if it spends $1 million, is going to collect $1 million, one way or the other. It has to. Where else is it going to get the money? I mean, yeah, okay, let's say it's collecting $500,000. It can go out and borrow the other $500,000, but it's got to pay the debt back, right? So one way or the other, it's going to collect the taxes to pay for this. So if they say, well, we're not going to tax the rich, well, then they're going to have to tax everyone else. Or if they say, well, we're not going to tax the poor and the middle class, they're going to have to tax the rich. And ultimately this game starts to cave in on itself, which is, of course, what's happening with Greece and Italy and so forth. And it's happening in the United States. But we can't fall for this kind of nonsense where they say, oh, well, no, we're going to lower tax rates here, we're going to lower tax rates here, when they all advocate the continued level of spending. Because ultimately somebody's going to have to pay for that, and we shouldn't be letting them maneuver us into fighting each other and trying to envy what other people have and covet what other people have. When you have that kind of society, you got a society it's going down. I mean, a society that's based on envy and covetousness and stealing, that's a society that's rotting from the inside. So the solution to this is what we keep saying at the Future of Freedom Foundation. Reject the statism, dismantle all this statist junk that they have foisted across our land, and restore a free market, free enterprise system to our land, one in which people are free to keep everything they earn, where enterprise is free of government control, and government's purpose is limited to the defensive of protecting life, liberty, and property from aggressive people, the murderers, the rapists, the thieves, the invaders, and so forth. So that's the show. Enjoyed being with you guys again this week, and I'll see you next Saturday. Again, if you can make our Civil Liberties tour, we'd love to have you. Thanks so much for your great support of the Future of Freedom Foundation. Thanks for your great commitment to liberty. See you next week. Bye.